Greetings, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You know, in a world where femininity is being erased, being exploited, I would say those of us who are walking the path, we are being called to restore it, and not just with compliments, not just with cliches, but with revelation. Understanding that a woman is someone, yes, who's supposed to be protected, should be protected, but who should also be remembered. And because when Yah made her as Ezer, Yah made the woman to be a strength like no other strength. All right, so in getting started, if you're ready to reframe the feminine through a spiritual lens, I would advise you and encourage you to subscribe to this channel now. All right. So I am Chief Yuya. I just want to introduce myself. I'm the head Jegna of the ANU Nation. Let's get into it. Now, if we go back to Genesis 2, we see where Yah caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam. And from that sleep came a being called Isha, or woman. And this wasn't about romance at all. It was about the restoration of a divine image. And she was called Ezer Kenegdo, which is a power facing him. So her call, or her point in being brought forth, was not to be a sidekick, was not to be, a diminished power, but to be a wonder. All right, as you see in the title, so we're going to go right into it. To understand this is to understand that a woman's power is not in her performance, as the world would sort of trick you into thinking. We sort of live in a world where we're told the more you do, the more you're worth. And in our ancestral wisdom and in our culture, most importantly, which comes from that wisdom, it's actually the opposite. Often that we understand and teach. A woman's value isn't in how much she does, but what she does that endures. Okay, so a lot of times we've confused activity with impact, and we've praised performance over presence. So just like when you look at Proverbs 31, it doesn't say that she's beautiful. It doesn't say that she's fashionable per se. It says that she considers a field and she buys it. And with the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She opens her mouth and her mouth with wisdom, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. So that's generational thinking, generational sort of presence. She's not buying $40,000 Birkin bags. She's buying land. She's not gossiping. She's speaking wisdom. She's not just decorating the house. She's clothing her whole household with preparation and with care. So we start to understand that the woman of Yahuwah isn't chasing relevance. She's relevant because she builds something that cannot be torn down. It can't be destroyed. So I would urge us to move away from our current way of thinking and sort of move our women away from just looking at them towards, moving towards holy living, and looking at a woman as a sacred space. Because the sacred space is where legacy forms, is where order is felt, is where the community is covered. And you start to see now that a woman doesn't just glow to be admired. She glows because she's lit by her mission. She's a climate shifter, and she commands spiritual weather. So strength and dignity are her clothing, as the words start to speak about. And she shall rejoice in time, to come. So that's speaking about longevity. That's that calm confidence. She's not loud, she's felt. When you start to look at what a righteous woman or an ANU woman truly is. Strength, it looks like surrender, but it isn't weakness. And I think that's an important thing to understand. We got to talk about submission, because in the modern secular world that we live in, it's been misunderstood. And I'd say in its entirety, submission is not weakness. It's not subservience even. And it's definitely not silence. Submission when done in righteousness is actually a form of high, deep thought intelligence. It says I can lead, but I choose to follow divine structure so that Yahuwah's glory can be revealed through me. That's submission. So in a house of truth, submission is not slavery, it's sacred alignment. And a woman of Yahuwah always knows that to reflect order, you don't have to dominate, but you have to learn how to discern. Discernment over domination every time. When you look at the ANU way, it tells you some of the required qualities of women. She's emotionally mature. She's cooperative. She's accountable. She's filled with the spirit of Yah. She's submissive, not because she's weak, but because she understands seasons and placement. And that's a key thing when it comes to submission. She's not quiet because she has no thoughts. She's quiet because she knows timing and she knows tone. And most importantly, she knows the terrain. There's a lot of wisdom in that. It's important to understand that there's no honor in rebellion. There's no integrity in that. And there's no real power in being independent but ungoverned. That's nothing but Jezebel spirit. The Most High designed the woman to mirror divine will. And that takes more strength, not less strength. So she submits to law, not chaos, whether it be mental chaos or emotional chaos. She admits to the Most High originator, not to her own ego. And because of that, her spirit remains unshaken. Even when the world begins to tremble, she'll still be unshaken. When you start to look at the characteristics, a woman's legacy, when we talk about, I hear so many times women talk about, I want to leave a legacy. They have it twisted. A woman's legacy is multi-generational, and I'm going to explain quickly what that looks like. If you go deeper, a woman's power is not just felt in the present. It's a ripple through time, woman's real power. In my ancestral tradition, women were never background players. They were the ones who were covenant bearers. They were the ones who shaped the nation. They were divine strategists. Like you look at Sarai, who became Sarah, and she didn't just become a mother in her old age. Like that wasn't the whole story. She became a mother because of a promise given to her by the Most High. And she laughed at that prophecy, but Yahuwah had already written Yitzhak, who you may call Isaac, into her womb. So even in doubt, Yah's word over her identity stood firm. Then you have Rivka. Rivka is who you may call Rebecca, and she carried two nations in her womb, and she discerned the divine will, even when it meant breaking from tradition. She knew Yaqub, or who you might call Jacob, was the chosen vessel. So she moved in wisdom and not in favoritism, but more so prophetic obedience. Then you have Leah, which we just say Leah, but it's actually kind of like two words, Le apostrophe Ah. She's often overlooked. She bore Yehuda, or you may call Judah, and through Yehuda, royalty would flow. So from her came kings and priests and the Messiah, himself. So with the world, while the world saw Leah as unloved, Yah saw her as necessary, for the plan. So these weren't just women who were just wives, they were midwives of destiny, if you would. Each one of them sort of shaped the foundation of Yasharel or Israel through discernment, devotion, and divine timing, And so now that brings us all the way down the line to the ANU woman, right? Who are called to walk in that same energy as your foremothers, understanding that you're not just a mother, you are a matrix of movement. You're not just a woman, but you are a walking covenant. So your rhythm, your submission, all of it builds that's what builds your spiritual inheritance. So that's why you have to protect your decisions. You have to protect your alignment. You have to even protect your emotions because every woman who walks in truth becomes a node, if you will, of blessings. So I would ask you this: if Yahuwah were to trace, or the Most High were to trace a lineage through you, would it still be righteous? If your spirit shaped a future nation, would it still honor the Creator's order? So this is your legacy. The things I described, it's not just in name, but it's more so in frequency. The frequency that you shape a nation with down through a bloodline. So when I say a woman is a wonder, as this segment is titled, what I'm saying, a woman is a wonder because she holds mystery and majesty in tension. In her womb there is life, but then there is also death to the ego. There's a softness in her womb, but there's also the strength to withstand labor. In her womb, she walks through these different cycles that reflect the moon, that reflect the seasons, all without demanding any sort of recognition. That's the mystery part, right? Or the secret part. But she also wears a crown. When you think of a woman, she wears a crown. It's an invisible crown because she's a sovereign over a sacred space, the temple, the home, the body. And even when the world tries to strip her of her name, her order, and strip her of her structure, it is the originator's fingerprint that remains, like stamped on her soul. That's more of the secret mystery, if you will. And she doesn't choose one over the other. She carries both the majesty and the mystery in her posture, in her tears, in her laughter, in her affirmations, in her meditation. And that's what makes her like a wonder. She's like she's something to be in awe of, a real woman, a true woman, because she births an entire nation in silence, and I don't know if you totally understand what that could mean, but while others are speaking, while others are battling and going to war with in rage, she's creating a legacy. So in a hidden room, in blood, in water, in wordless travail, she's creating a legacy. There's no applause. There may be no cameras. There's no parades. It's just purpose. It's just power. It's just pain submitted to divine assignment. So she doesn't need a platform to be pivotal. Excuse me. She knows that nations don't begin on battlefields, but nations begin in the womb. And this is why Sarai, she became Sarah. It's not just because her body changed, but because her identity aligned itself with the covenant. The same thing with Rivka. Rivka had to discern the destinies of twins that were inside of her. And, Leah had to bear sons even when love was withheld from her. So they were doing more than mothering, these great ancestors. They were birthing prophetic movements, but doing it in silence. A mother or a woman, she shields a king without even having a sword. I would let that kind of sit with you for a second. A righteous woman doesn't just cover her children, she covers her man. And she covers his mission. She covers his vision. She sees the attack coming, before it even manifests. And she intercepts it by way of communion and affirmation with the Creator. She doesn't need to shout. She doesn't need to fight the way the world would have her fight, or the world fights, because she already knows that spiritual warfare is often done in whispers. It's not done in war cries. She fasts, and she doesn't destroy and mess up her fast when no one is watching. With no announcement, she withdraws when chaos comes. Chaos arises, and she reminds the king of his crown when he forgets he has one. She remembers even when he forgets himself. When you're looking at the value of a righteous woman, a set apart woman, and I would say most of all, above all of that, a woman reveals the timing and the rhythm of the originator. It's tender, but it's unshakable rhythm. It's unshakable timing of Yah. Um, a righteous woman moves in a flow. She adapts. She absorbs. She transforms. And she transforms environments not with force, but with frequency. A righteous woman, her nature is water, but her core is rock. So, she can be that gentle word that's still firm, with purpose. She can be that nurturing presence, but still have resolute principle. The Creator didn't design her necessarily to compete with man. He designed her to complete the expression, of um, divine balance. So she doesn't need to, initiate masculine energy to be valid. Her power is in her ability to reflect the cadence of the Creator in the flesh. So I would just say this to every woman who's listening, every sister, your wonder isn't in your image. It's not the aesthetics. It's not in how many compliments you get, or your social media following, or, it's not even in how many things that you do. Your wonder is in your origins. You came from order. So you were formed from an intention, and you were sculpted in someone's rest from their side, not from the dust. So you are the echo of the Creator's voice when he said, it's not good for man to be alone. You are the reverberation of that sentiment. So you were the answer to the divine's observation, not an afterthought, but an anointed architecture based on, I observed this and I'm going to create her as the answer. So, your mystery you should hold on to with reverence, and you should walk in your majesty, I would say, with great humility, knowing that your womb, the spiritual and the physical womb, it's not just for birthing babies, but it's for birthing realities, you know. Um, and if I were to affirm with you, I would say, just affirm that you're a wonder. I, Shanae Jenkins, am a wonder because I reflect the rhythm of Yah. I birth nations in silence. I shield destiny with my wisdom. My power is not in performance. My power is in presence. That would be an affirmation I would probably give my daughters. You know, they're not named Shanae Jenkins, but if you affirm in it and you know it, walk in it. Speak it, build in it. The world's not going to understand your design, but like the Creator never called the world to understand your your design. So let me say something nice. So don't sweat it, you know. So I would say, if this message spoke to you, definitely subscribe, join the movement. This is a movement of restoration and righteous order, and share this with a woman who you honor. Try to really see if maybe you can sit down with your sister friends and like go through these things and try to understand them, and break them down together as a crew, or, word for word. Like, am I moving this way? How do I see the value of my womb, or the value of submission, or the value of silence, or recognizing that I am crafted and designed as an answer to what Yah saw as a possible, quagmire or possible dilemma, and then I come forth. So, or I'm made forth, right? I mean, the woman just didn't appear out of thin air. Well, in a way she did, but that's a whole nother metaphysical conversation. So yeah, I would just say, share it, and affirm that this is who I am, this is who I've come to be, and the world standards are never going to recognize and honor and celebrate who and what you are divine as a divine woman. That they're not supposed to. You shouldn't even look for it. That's not their intention. Their intention is to make you be the opposite of what brings you closer to your power. Your natural placement is what makes you powerful. Your legacy is not in, I bought some stuff, or I got some stocks, or I have an annuity, or I have this retirement fund, and I'm going to give it to my daughters, or I'm going to give it to my grandchildren. That is not a legacy. That is not a legacy. Legacies are built spiritually, and because all of those things can be taken, exploited, lost, squandered, stolen, torn down. Your legacy is built in those things that can't be torn down. And the only things that are permanent are the things of the divine and the cosmic order. That's it. And it requires order and submission in order to tap into those things. You can't tap into them by yourself. It doesn't work. And if you notice that everything that I've said in this insight is in relationship to the woman and her family, and the woman and her king, standing up, and like I said, you can outwardly shout and praise, I'm queen so-and-so, I'm priestess so-and-so. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a hill of beans. Nothing. Only to simple-minded people. I mean, simple-minded people will, they'll bow down to that. But those who have the power of discernment, which is really a strong gift that the woman has to tap into, will see right through that. Discernment is so important for the woman, because you are called to be the image of your man. And that may seem like a small thing until you really, really think about it. A lot of times women use their aesthetics to pull the best man, the best man out of a group. Well, I'm the prettiest woman, and maybe I do have a couple little skills here and there, so I should get that man. Okay, cool. That may get you into the room, with that man. But let's say if that man has the most developed and ascended mind and thinking patterns out of every man in your community, every man in your village, every man in your group. He is the smartest one. He is the quickest one, the brightest one, the most intellectual. Don't you know that you now, if that is your true man, that's your real man, you are now being required to be an image of that. Think about that for a second. And you can, even if it's to put it into perspective, if you want, go look up some men who exist who work in high sciences or high mathematics, or high level engineering, and maybe read a little bit about what they do, or some of the innovations that they've come up with, or some of the inventions that they've come up with. And then ask yourself, like, read it and see, do I understand all of this? Could I teach this back to someone else who may say, I want to understand exactly what your husband does and how he thinks and how he comes up with this method and his process. If you're like, I don't know what he do. I just know he likes his mashed potatoes lumpy, and, then you're not really the image reflection, or the image projection of that man. You're not the image projection of that man. You're not really his Isha. And there's no way you could be his easier connecto, because there's no way you could cover him, because you don't even understand his image. you haven't even taken on his calling as your mission. So, that's not your man. That's not your man. NACHO. That's not your man. Okay. So, I just say that to say there's work to do for all of us. As men, there's work to do. Women have this very wondrous and miraculous sort of potential, divine potential given to them by the divine. Um, and it's worth exploring, sisters, and it's worth understanding, and it's worth honoring and respecting. It's worth honoring, respecting. All right. So with that, again, I always call you join the village. Apply for ANU Nation. Some of you have already started joining the Facebook group, which is cool. Speak up in the groups. So let us know who you are. Share, even if it's just the smallest thing about yourself. I like tangerines over navel oranges. Okay, cool. you know. Um, but speak up. Yeah, speak up, because a lot of you who have joined, I know you, or I have worked with you in the past, or still am working with you. So I kind of know who you are when you come in, but let everybody else know. Like, oh, this is who I am. But anyway, thank you for coming through, and those of you who've been contributing and speaking up and sharing ideas and comments and things like that, not only in the Facebook ANU Life Global Village group, but also here, on this channel as well. As always, I urge you to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell. I'm gonna start saying that more. I was looking at the analytics, and a lot don't have the notification bell. And there is something interesting going on with the subscribers that I have also noticed, because I get notifications for how many subscribers we get, but it never seems to match the number, which is kind of interesting. Like last strong, we got 13 subscribers, but the subscribership only grew by like 3 people. Because I noticed when I get 3, I might lose 3. So yeah, something kind of interesting going on in there with the YouTubian ecosystem. But nonetheless, right, I still want to thank you for being present. Those of you who are, coming through consistently, learning consistently. You even once in a while might even pop your head in and share. I thank you for taking out the time to do that. Also, I want to give a notification. I guess that's summer, June retreat is coming up. You can go to the ANU Life Global.org website to get more information about it. It's going to be in Georgia this year. And, as of maybe 2-3 years ago, I think, something like that, I started opening up the retreats to the public. Before, it was only just ANU members. And then I felt like it was a good, well, the creator said to me, because I don't really have too many great ideas on my own, but that it's a good opportunity for people who are interested in the community, or maybe being a part of the community, like interacting in a more analog and organic way before, doing what you do. So I think it's coming to the retreats is great, because I always keep the retreats very low tech, and it's just low tech because most of the time we're camping or something like this. So you might have your phone on, but the signal may be, but it urges interaction. It urges organic interaction, or just organic assisting. Could be helping to start a fire, or or cutting up some vegetables together, or making a run to the store to go get some ice or something, or whatever it is. There's 5,000 things. I was having fun with the youth at the last one. One of them brought a magnifying glass, and we were just burning everything. Yeah, I could be so childish sometimes, but I don't know. I was like, yo, burn that leaf. Oh man, it's burning, burn that. But it's kind of messed up. But they were already like dead stuff on the ground, which is kind of dangerous, I guess, too, because you could have started a fire. But I was there, so it was supervised by an adult. Right. But, it could be little things like that, but you get those moments to have organic connection. So, I urge you, come out to the retreat, come out to Georgia. I don't remember the town, Hambach, Habakkuk. I don't remember. It's on the website though. Just go to ANULifeGlobal.org and you'll see the information for the retreats, as well as if you want to join and be a part of this beautiful celestial community, or if you want to give an offering of support as well. All the links are up there for that. And I noticed, people have been getting the On Your Way. Great. That's a free book and guide that you can download. If you want to give an offering, cool. If it's not on your heart to give, don't worry about it. It's free either way. So I'm glad that people have been soaking that up. That's really, really good. It'll help you a lot. Volume 1. Volume 2 is coming very soon. I just wanted to give Volume 1 some time to kind of saturate and soak in for those who take the work seriously and are actually applying it. All right. So with that, I want to thank you for this time. I want to thank you for kicking it with me, and willfully you sisters and brothers as well, especially if you're raising, sisters, young sisters into princesses and then into queens. Willfully you receive something in this session that assisted your work and assisted your journey. All right. So until such time, I am Chief Yuya Asan Anu, signing off. Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem.